Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Jew and Gentile podcast. I am your host, Chris Katulka, and with me is none other than the Jewish sage with a new hip, the one, the only, Mr. Steve Herzig. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Chris. This is great.
But you, when I say you have a new hip, I don't mean like your hip. I mean like...
No one's ever called me hip.
I'm talking like you've got a new hip. Since our last podcast, you had an old hip, and now you have a new hip. So we got a lot to talk about.
The old hip has passed away. Behold, titanium hip has become new. That's exactly right. Over the weekend, Alice and I were in Connecticut. I was supposed to be speaking at a church, Brantford Bible Church. I've known the people there. The church has supported our work faithfully. They're a wonderful group of folks, and I go there usually around this time of year. That's Alice's hometown, and so she sees people. We set aside a weekend to do that, and so Chris, it was going great. We went out to seafood, went to Lenny's Seafood on Friday with her brother. He gets the whole clams with the bellies, and it was great. And then spent some time with the host family that puts us up in an in-law suite in their house, which is great. Just a beautiful place. That was Friday. And then Saturday, Chris, we went to Herzig Farms. Herzig Tree Farm, which Alice found online. We drove there just to see Herzig Tree Farm. That's our name. What is this? So we visited, met the owner. He gave me a hat. I don't know if Alice could hear me. Maybe she could bring the hat and I'll show you the hat. I think we sent you a picture. But anyway, so that we did Saturday. She's throwing me the hat. Look, there it is. Herzig Tree Farm.
It almost has the same font as Make America Great Again. It's green. It says Herzig Tree Farm on it.
That's right. So we did that, and then we were married in December 18th. It'll be 47 years, and we went to Mystic, Connecticut. So we did that. We were going to go to Mystic. It was packed. We then decided we got to go back. I was going to stop and get gas. Alice goes to Dunkin' Donuts to get jelly donuts, the only place she can get them. Jelly donuts at Dunkin' Donuts in Connecticut. And I was getting gas, and I filled up the tank, and I needed to go. I put the hoses across from me, and I needed to go to the garbage can. So I did what I've done before. I just said, I'll leap over the hose. That was the last thing I did. I went down like a ton of bricks. I got up immediately, took a step, and Chris, I went back down. I am lying on the cement, and my leg is flopped to the right. I'm in agony, and from that point, so Alice is still getting the donuts. She doesn't know what's going on, and I can't get up. And a woman comes and says, "Are you all right?" I said, "I don't really think I'm okay." And she said, "Should we call an ambulance?" I said, "No." I said, "If you could get me to the car." And so her husband was right there. They both, and that meantime, Alice comes out, and she's, "What happened?" I said, I fell. The woman took I did not knock the hose over. It was still attached. The car was filled. She put it away for me, but they got under me, right under my arms. And Chris, I was in agony. And just from the back of the car to the passenger side, I thanked them profusely. I don't know who they were. I thanked them with every part of my being. And we called friends because we knew we wanted to be close. We knew we had to go to an emergency place. So we called. They directed us real close to where we were staying with those friends. And I went into the emergency room. And Chris, to get out of the car, into the wheelchair onto the emergency room bed, I was literally crying. Alice was watching. She was. I couldn't move. The agony. It was so unbelievable. Anyway, the doctor looked at it, said, "Yep, you got a broken hip. Your foot is already shorter than your other one." And so anyway, you're hearing the phone ring. It's going to ring a few times. Anyway, so They made arrangements for the ambulance, took me to Yale Hospital. While I'm by the way, I videoed it. I didn't show you. I say, oh, do you mind if I video while we're in the ambulance? No, not at all. And I'm videoing, and I'm, videoing the lady who's asking her all kinds of questions. We're having a great time. And they said, oh, they got a room for you. I said, this is fantastic. No waiting. Nope, no waiting. You got a room. And by the way, they're working on surgery for you right now. I said, this is life right here. I'm not Elvis Presley. I mean, I'm Steve Herzig, and they got a room for me, a private room, no less. How does this?
Maybe they thought you were the owner of the tree farm. They got all excited about it.
I don't know. And so I got into the room. The guy comes in and says, "You must be in a lot of pain." I said, "Yep." He said, "You won't be." They do some sort of treatment that's called a nerve blocker, and they put a nerve blocker right there, and bada bing, bada boom. I know it's there, but I'm feeling pretty good. I got ice. They're bringing. Can we get you coffee? I said, sure. This is great. And so then the doctor, who I don't know how, they said, well, the doctor has seen your case and he's not scheduled for Sunday morning, but after he saw your case, he said he wants to come in, and you'll be the first one we'll do tomorrow on Sunday morning, Chris. He comes in on Sunday morning. So I was up all night, came downstairs, met two lovely people down there in the pre-op, and I asked questions about their lives and how long they've been doing this and what happened to me. And I said, I was supposed to preach on Jonah. Do you mind if you want to hear my message? I'll give you a shortened view. And they said, we'd love to hear your message. So they're working on me and giving me warm blankets to prepare me because it's cold in the operating room. And so I talked to them about Jonah, told them what I was going to say. And I said, you know about Jonah, right? And Chris, it really made me sad, really sad. They were probably in their late 40s, early 50s. And, growing up in the New Haven area, they're both from Connecticut. And they said, we never heard of Jonah. I said, you never heard of the great fish who swallowed Jonah? No, we never did. And so I said, I can't believe this. And so I went over again what happened with Jonah. And they said, boy, this sounds, you were supposed to speak and you had this accident. And I said, well, there's another guy in the Bible named Joseph, and his brothers were real mean to him. And then he had other trouble. And by the end of the story, he turns to his brothers and says, you meant all this for evil, but God used it for good. And so I said, I don't know why I fell, other than I'm stupid. I am now remember Forrest Gump movie? Stupid is as stupid does. So I'm the definition of stupid. A 71-year-old man does not try to jump a gas hose, but I did.
You hurdled.
That's right. I did, and I failed. So I told them, I said, well, what I did stupid, God has used for good. I said, look, I get to tell you my message. I knew I was going to preach. I just am preaching to people that are different than what I thought. Anyway, I go into the surgery, come out of the surgery. Alice is there. It was great. She's been wonderful through this. By Sunday night, Chris, I was up doing PT. I'm upstairs, downstairs, and was out of the hospital by Tuesday. My son came, he was so kind, took a day off and came up, picked us up because I can't drive for a couple weeks. And so we got home yesterday, and life has been fantastic.
I think you even said this has been one of the best moments of your life.
It has been one of the defining. God has been through this, Chris. This is your opportunity to still advertise Finding Messiah In. Why don't you give a spiel for our folks?
All right, I'm going to give two spiels then. Number one, if you remember, the Jew and Gentile podcast is sponsored by FOI Equip. And at FOI Equip, we like to give things away for free. Hey, Steve, I'm up here in upstate New York at Word of Life Bible Institute, and I was hanging out with a good friend of mine, John Bubar, who has his family has a legacy here at Word of Life Bible Institute. And we were talking about all the various ministries that we're doing. And he said, Chris, I read a book once. There's two types of people when it comes to doing. He goes, it was when he was in business in the secular world. He said there are two different types of people. There's the go-get-ems, and then there's the go-givers. And he says the go-get-ems burn out fast because all they do is take. You know, in the business, you want to be a go-getter. And then he said, but the go-givers are the people who give. And it takes a little bit longer to influence people. But when you give things away, when you give of your time and your energy and your resources, you build deeper relationships, and you have a lasting relationship with people when you give. And next thing you know, they're inviting you to come and share about what you're doing. So we want to give. We want to be go-givers. And so that's why we're giving away two things today, and then we're going to ask for something. So the first thing we're giving away are free stickers. Text us at 424-444. 1948. I'm up here teaching about 100 or so students on intertestamental history, and I got about 50 of them that just texted me that they want stickers. So that's great. 424-444. 1948. Text us. We want to send you 50 free stickers and how you can get involved with Friends of Israel through these amazing free stickers. The next is, it's still Christmas season, and we've been running a campaign called Christmas is Jewish. And we want to hand you or give to you a free digital download of our devotional, Finding Messiah and Christmas. And you can get that for free by going to christmasisjewish.org. So we're giving you stickers for free. We're giving you a 25-day devotional for free that you can still use with your family. But then at the exact same time, we want to ask you, we're in our end of the year campaign right now. We give things out all year long, but we want to raise $25,000 at FOI Equip to continue to teach about the Jewishness of the Bible and to minister to Jewish people all around the world through our various programs that we have. And so if you could help us raise $25,000, this will help send interns into Jewish communities. This will help train people to be able to minister to their Jewish friends.
And what about our course tonight on Equip? It's going to help finance things like that.
Exactly. Tonight we've got an online course that's free, all about Hanukkah. And it's going to be great. I'll be teaching about the history of Hanukkah, the events that took place. And then next week, Steve's going to talk about what it meant for him as an Orthodox Jewish young man growing up in a Jewish household to celebrate Hanukkah and the various traditions that come with that from the past to the modern age and to the modern time. So you can go to foiequip.org. And when you go there, you can do a bunch of things that we want to give to you for free. But one of them is you can sign up for our class on Hanukkah. The next thing is that you can go to the donate page and give to help continue FOI Equip. So that's the Jew and Gentile podcast. We are sponsored by FOI Equip. We hope that you take the free things that we give. We love giving things away, but we also hope that the Lord leads you to give so that we can continue to minister to the Jewish community and to spread the truth about Israel and the Jewish people. So, Steve, you've been ministering right from your hospital bed. And let me ask you this question, Steve. Do you have a walker? Are you on a walker right now?
I am on a walker. I had to get tennis balls to put my worst nightmare, Chris. Let me see if I could show our 7 listeners. Do you see it?
Oh, I don't see the tennis balls, but I see the wall. Oh, keep it going. Up there they are right there. And you cut them perfectly.
I went on YouTube and we had to make sure.
I want to know how many views. I want to know how many views that YouTube has.
I don't know. That's a good question. But when we were driving home from the hospital, Alice was talking to our son Jonathan, and told him that Medicare pays for a walker. So he said, you got to be sure to have the tennis balls. And I said, tennis balls. Well, I needed tennis balls because I started to walk and it makes this terrible noise on the floor. And so we had to contact Jonathan and take a picture and say, you were right. You were right. So
it's funny because you think this big company that's making these walkers would just intuitively think, we should put something underneath these.
No, they're in cahoots with the tennis ball industry.
Who would have thought?
You wash my back, I'll wash your back, or scratch.
You know, that's like the Q-tip industry. It's like the one thing we all use Q-tips for is to clean our ears. But when you get to that Q-tip box, it says, please use these for anything you could possibly want to use them for, but your ears.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, hey, listen. Steve,
well, let me tell you real quick, because Alice came prepared. Remember, we're going to her stomping ground. And so we were going to, because Friends of Israel Publishing sells these for $8. And remarkably and wonderfully, we sold quite a few of them, which I'm happy about. My wife bought 50 of them, 50 of them.
That's how we got rid of them.
That's how we did. We're the number one customer. The employee is the number one customer. So, and she brought enough because she wanted to give them away up in Connecticut. Well, we weren't going to the church, so I asked her to bring them, and every person that I could, I would say to them, look, I realize where I'm at. You might not be interested, but I have a devotional. It's Christmas. I believe in Jesus. And could I give you this? They all took them. It was great. We were handing them out like crazy. And it was wonderful. I had opportunities with a Muslim woman, with Catholic people, with people who didn't know anything about the Bible. In fact, as they were explaining, the PT person came and I talked to him about all kinds of things. And he said to me, I have to tell you, it's my responsibility. You need a walker, but he said, the way I'm judging you is that I have a feeling when you're done with it, you're going to give it away. And you can't give it away because you're only allowed one. Medicare will only pay for one. So lend it out. Don't give it away. So that's counterintuitive to what the book was. Medicare didn't read the book that Dr. Buber read.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're go-getters, not go-givers.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd be happy to lend this thing out when we're done with it. But it was funny. Medicare, no lending. You get one. That's it. So anyway, I wanted to read, Chris. I know it's December 12th as we're taping this, but you did December 5th, and it's a great reminder, born in Bethlehem. And each of the days we have just a short little text. Each of our writers, which, by the way, in this text, we have several of your interns wrote for this particular devotional, which was, Chris, can you imagine? You were an intern. You were an intern under me. I never had an opportunity to give you a writing responsibility. How would you have felt about that as an intern?
I would have been scared to death. I would have been scared to death.
Well, in December 5th, the Bible verse was Micah 5:2, but you, Bethlehem Ephratah, you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from old, from everlasting. And so I'm just going to read a little bit. They're going to have to download it. And how can they download it? Even now, 2 weeks before Christmas, how can they download it?
Yeah, you can go to christmasisjewish.org and you can sign up and get the free digital download of Finding Messiah and Christmas.
All right, I'm just going to read your beginning and give them a taste, so they'll have to download it to read it for themselves. But it says, as you write, the Christmas carol, O little town of Bethlehem, speaks of the long-awaited arrival of God's everlasting light into humanity's humble conditions. But Bethlehem often gets a bad rap, painted as an insignificant pit stop on the way to Jerusalem. I like the way you worded that, Chris. A pit stop to Jerusalem. The surroundings of the King of Kings at his arrival were unpresuming, but that fact didn't demean him. Instead, it defined him in epic and majestic ways. They're going to have to read the rest of it, Chris, but what a way to start our thoughts towards the one who is born in Bethlehem, a pit stop to Jerusalem.
It's a pit stop, but the point is that of the devotional, Steve, is that when we think about Bethlehem, it is oftentimes it is kind of given the same reputation as Jesus's birth in a manger, a humble place, almost insignificant. And so the point of the devotional is to say Bethlehem was anything but insignificant. there was so much prophecy. There was so much history coming out of this tiny town 5 miles south of Jerusalem, that when Jesus was born there, it was sending very, very, very important signals to the Jewish world about his arrival. So anyway, hopefully that encourages people as they think about and when they read it. And again, you can go to christmasisjewish.org to finish that devotional and to read even more as well. We still have a couple more days till Christmas. Steve, have you done Christmas shopping? Or are you?
No, my normal Christmas shopping time is December 18th, our anniversary, a week before Christmas. Alice and I historically have gone out for our anniversary for lunch, and then we buy stuff for people. So we were just talking about how that's been changed a little bit because of the accident that I have. But either way, we'll get it done. I've been online. I tell you, I've had time. This is like, I get up, I know I'm not going anywhere. I know where I am going to be for the next several days. I'm getting nervous that it's going to make me crazy. Alice is very nervous about that.
Hey, let's just say yesterday this podcast was supposed to get done, but somebody was sawing logs yesterday in the afternoon.
There is no question about that. I was working on we're doing another Finding Messiah. We'll have more about that later. We're working on it now, and I was working with our team on that, and it plus the visiting nurse came. It was exhausting. And so I had warned you that I might not make it. And so, Chris, I have to admit, I never heard a thing. My tongue was probably hanging out. I was gone to the world. It's true.
I called you once or twice when we were supposed to record this. Nothing, bupkis. I thought, well, maybe he's sitting by his walker and his phone is on the other side of the room and he can't get up in time. So then I call your house number, and I'm sure nobody answers their landline anymore. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bug Alice. And Alice texted me back and said, he's long gone. He is fast asleep. So that was it.
Fast asleep. I was fast asleep. But Chris, I know we're stressed for time, but you're at Word of Life right now. You have to tell, you and I have to go back and forth with this story, because the story starts at Word of Life, and it starts with a young man who took advantage of our stickers. And you caught that. You watched it. You saw it. Why don't you start it off? And then I'm going to tell you, it has nothing to do with me or you. It's about a young man who took a sticker, and then it was a person who took our offer to get stickers, and lots of cool things happened. So why don't you start us off with that story?
Well, I'll start with this. I'm teaching intertestamental history up here. And Steve, you know this, the defining moment of intertestamental history, that's the period between Malachi and Matthew. The defining moment of the history of that 400 years has to do with one man, one old priest from a town called Modain. His name was Mattathias. And Mattathias lived by his convictions. He stood up in front of the Jewish people who were capitulating to the Greeks, and he stood up to the Greeks and was unwilling to compromise his faith in God and his trust in God's commands, and was willing to die. He would rather die than to sacrifice and show allegiance to the king of Greece, or to the king of Syria, of the northern area there. His name was Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV. And so he lived by conviction. And so during yesterday's class, when I was teaching, I said, sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes you get as bold as you could possibly be, like Mattathias, and you live by conviction, and you let everybody know who you are. And that one man, Mattathias, according to First Maccabees, changed the course of history for the Jewish people. And I said, sometimes you don't realize that your convictions as a believer can change the course of other people's lives as well. And I pointed out a young man named Jacob, who I met in July, who has kind of been the staple of our sticker campaign here. Because when I saw him, he was leading worship when I was speaking at the family camp up here. He was leading worship, and I noticed on his guitar, I took a picture of it. I noticed on his guitar, he had "I love Israel" and "Pray for the Peace." That's the sticker right there if you're watching online. He has that on his guitar, and he has "Pray for the Peace of Jerusalem" and other things as well. It's a collage of stickers that are on his guitar that he came up to me and said, "These are my convictions. I stand by these things." And then when I told you this, I'm sure our listeners know this story, you said, "We've got to start giving out stickers." And since then, we have given out, I think, Steve, you said more than 10,000 stickers.
10,000 stickers, yep.
So I told Jacob that we've given out 10,000 stickers because he shared with me about his conviction, and he was overwhelmed. And I mean, he was like, what? You know, all I did was stick it on my guitar. But that's exactly the point. I'm not comparing Jacob with, I'm not trying to say it's a one-to-one connection. Jacob's living a very safe, nice life up here in the Pine, up at Word of Life, doing ministry. Mattathias' life was on the line, but still they share something in common. And the thing in common is conviction. They live by conviction for the Lord and what the scriptures teach. And so, Steve, maybe you want to share really quick about how one of these stickers has made its way onto a cell phone that then made its way into a conversation for a Bible study about Jesus, the Jewish Messiah.
That's exactly right. That Jacob caught my attention, where Israel's important to him, and that's how we started that campaign. And one of our 7 listeners, Patty Larson, who heard about my accident, contacted me just to see how I was and praying for me. And then she, in the course of conversation, said, "I just have to tell you one story about a sticker. I gave a sticker to my friend, and she proudly put it on her phone, and her phone needed service. So she went to Verizon, and she's standing in the line in Verizon and holding her phone, and the service person said, "Oh, you that sticker, what is that sticker? I love Israel?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Are you Jewish?" And she said, "No, I'm a Christian." And he said, "You're a Christian and you love Israel? Why is that?" So she explained why it is. He said, "Well, I'm Muslim." And so she said, "Great." And they got into a conversation, and he began to ask her theological questions. And according to Patty, they were more difficult than what she could answer. She said, "You know, my pastor could probably give you better answers than I can. Would it be all right if he comes and contacts you?" He said, "Yes, have him come. We could do a Bible study there'll be people here who will want to hear the same thing." And so Patty told me that her pastor came and they had a Bible study, all initiated because of a "I Love Israel" sticker.
I love it. So that is, I think, a great story. You know, another story, Steve, of conviction that I love, you know, in 1965, Sandy Koufax was he's a Jewish man, and it happened to be that game 1 of the World Series fell on Yom Kippur.
1965 Minnesota Twins.
That's right. And he ends up saying, "You know what? I'm going to sit this one out because of Yom Kippur. It's a part of my faith and who I am." And, it's still something. How many years, 40, 50, 60 years later, we're still talking about this moment when Sandy Koufax stood up and said, "I'm not playing game 1 of the World Series because I'm Jewish and it happens to fall on Yom Kippur." We're still talking about it. A man of conviction. Well, there's another man of conviction that's recently popped up as a result of Christmas, and that's Patrick Mahomes, Steve. Patrick Mahomes decided to make it known that he's not that excited about the fact that during the Christmas season, the NFL is making him and his team, and even all of the other, other teams as well that have to play on Christmas, that the NFL is making them play on Christmas. And this is really unique that somebody like Patrick Mahomes, with a voice like him, one of the greatest, modern day quarterbacks of our time, would speak up and be so bold about playing on Christmas. Maybe you want to comment on that, Steve.
I do want to comment on it. He's going to play. This isn't the same thing as Sandy Koufax, but I really appreciate you're associating the two together.
But Sandy Koufax still had a few more games to play after that. You only get one game. You know what I mean? That's it. So
no, I understand. But what's interesting is, first of all, they deliberately moved this game so that they would play on Christmas. They're going to end up playing 3 games in 11 days, and that's football, NFL football. That's difficult. But he writes in the article, and this is, it will be in our show notes, I take it, right, Chris? You're going to put it in the show notes. It's from Fox News, and he talks about the commitment he needs to make, that this is the schedule. He's just saying how disappointed he is. And then he says this, Chris: "My Christian faith plays a role in everything that I do," he told the reporters before Super Bowl in February 2023. "I always ask God to lead me in the right direction and let me be who I am for his name. So it has a role in everything that I do. Obviously, we'll be on the huge stage in the Super Bowl that he's given me, and I want to make sure I'm glorifying him. I feel like I've grown in my faith these last few years, and I think that's given me more sense of who I am and why I play in the game." So his faith is important to him. And he said that at the Super Bowl, which probably prompted him through conviction to, even though he's going to play, he's one of the biggest stars, the best quarterback right now in the NFL. And he's telling the NFL, this isn't right. You're making us play 3 games. You moved the game because it's Christmas and kept our families apart on Christmas when it isn't even a normal broadcast day. The normal broadcasts are Sunday morning, Sunday night, Thursday, and Monday night. Yeah, and sometimes Saturday. But Wednesday, other than COVID, I don't believe they ever had a Wednesday game. They deliberately moved it to Christmas Day. And Patrick Mahomes has a conviction, just like you said, and I thought he handled it well. And for our listeners, to me, as a believer, when he said, "My faith is important to me," I think that's a good thing for America to hear of its sports heroes.
It kind of becomes a tradition that you watch football on Thanksgiving and you watch football even on Christmas. Sometimes they'll have the games and all that stuff. But, I'm okay with, I agree with what he's saying. I'm okay with shutting down NFL and sports. I'll put on a Christmas movie instead of the sports. And you know what? I'll be just fine.
Oh, you know what I put on Christmas? I put it on every Christmas. It's the easiest thing to watch. The Yule log.
Oh, the Yule log. Yeah.
I love the Yule log. It goes, the first thing on in the morning is my Yule log.
That is fantastic. So, conviction seems to be the theme here of our podcast, and it's interesting to see how he's speaking up. And he's kind of given himself a platform over the last few years, Steve, which gives him the ability to. And you know what I like that he's doing though too? He's speaking his mind, his conviction, which is going to create this conversation that we're having right now. But at the same time, he's saying, I will fulfill my obligations for the team. I will show up, which I actually think is the godly thing to do.
I agree.
It's selfishly motivated if you're a team-minded person to only think about yourself, and I don't want to go on Christmas. But he's fulfilling his obligations. But maybe it will start a national conversation about, is it right that we're doing this? Can we live one day without football?
Let's challenge our 7 listeners to go on the highways and byways and talk about no football on Christmas Day.
No, that's right. Let's see what people say. Conviction. All right. Hey, Steve, there's been a lot that's going on since you broke your hip. And you were in the hospital, and I'm sure that you have been sitting there keeping up with all the news. But one of the big things that we want to make sure that we're highlighting here on the Jew and Gentile podcast is the events that are happening in Syria. Now, the reason that this is important is because for more than a year now, Israel has been at war, not just a one-front war with Gaza and Hamas. It's become, I think, as many as 7 fronts for them on many different levels. And I actually don't even think they were thinking about this particular front. But they had issues with Israel, or Israel had issues with Hamas in Gaza. The Palestinians, or the radical factions of the Palestinians in the West Bank. That could be Hamas or Palestinian Jihad in the West Bank. They had the Houthis out in Yemen. They have Iran. They have Lebanon with the Hezbollah. And various other components. They have anti-Semitism growing all around the world in places like Europe, the United States. The United Nations is a bastion for being biased toward Israel. So lots of things that Israel has to deal with. But one that was not a topic of conversation for the most part, that I didn't really hear about that much, was Syria. But now Syria has become really the focal point for Israel and what's going on with the regional upheaval in the Middle East. And really the centerpiece of all of this upheaval, whether it's Hamas, whether it's what's going on in the West Bank or Judea, Samaria, what's going on up in Lebanon, or Yemen, the centerpiece of it all, the thing that's making it all happen, driving all these attacks against Israel and all the upheaval in the Middle East, is Iran, Steve. Iran is the main funder of it, but it seems as though the Ayatollahs and the religious leaders of Iran are losing their power and influence, and all of it seems to be trickling back to October 7th, 2023, when Hamas made the decision to attack Israel and kill 1,200 innocent Israelis, capture 250 and take them hostage. That day set off dominoes that would lead to where we are right now, which is the dismantling of many of the components and allies that Iran had in the Middle East.
You know, it's funny. You started off by asking if I was probably up with the news. So I'm in the hospital. It's right before surgery. I am online. I was up all night and I'm looking at news feeds. And I want to make sure, Alice, I said, you know, everything's go for surgery. You can meet me at 10 o'clock in recovery. And I said, by the way, Assad is overthrown. And she later told me, what was that last comment for? I said, well, that's big news. Assad is going to lose to a man who's from ISIS. His name is al-Jawlani, and the people there would rather have an ISIS guy than Assad, who has had thousands in prisons, and they end up finding $300 million worth of cars.
Oh, did you see the video of that?
Yes, I did. It's unbelievable. And so what took place is striking. People coming into the castle or whatever it was, that big compound, walking away with furniture and food. And the thing that's interesting is Iran didn't help them. And Chris, I'll tell you what was the most significant and amazing and really was a rebuke to the Western world is Israel in 2 days took out enough armor, tanks, missiles, the kind of missiles for chemical war heads, things like that, because in an uprising like that, it goes on the black market, which is exactly what happened to us in Afghanistan. And so Israel didn't want that to happen because those American weapons are now on the black market and are being used against the enemies of the Houthis and Iran and etc. So it was great. It was what Israel did was a favor to France, England, Poland, the United States, Canada, even though they're yelling at them, screaming at them. The United Nations is furious at them because they would dare cross over the international line in order not to kill anybody, but to take out weapons that could be used against people of peace. And so this is so significant historically. It's changing the whole dynamic of the Middle East. And as Donald Trump assumes office, and with the uncertainty that he presents to those who are enemies, whatever you think of Donald Trump, all of us would agree that from a perspective of how they perceive him, that he's crazy. and they don't know what he's liable to do, which works to his advantage. So now with these weapons gone, makes it even better. And Chris, the Lord knows he has a sense of humor. He accomplishes what we don't even think about and does it in ways that we can't even imagine. And so, Syria, the downfall of Syria is very significant. Is it going to be better for Israel in the West? I'm not sure, but most everybody agrees it is right now better for the Syrians than it was before.
You know, this is actually something that I wanted to mention. When we talk about Jelani, who is the leader, the issue with Syria is that Syria is made up of so many different factions, so many different tribes. It was impossible. Number one, Assad was a brutal dictator of these people. You were either on his side or you were basically dead or put in prison. And so Assad ruled with a heavy hand. And there has been, since 2011, I believe, there has been a civil war that's been going on in Syria. This isn't just something that happened overnight. No. Since the Obama administration, Syria has been in a civil war. And this is multiple groups of people working together or separately in order to topple the Assad regime. Syria, Steve, is such an important location for Iran because it's the bridge between Iran and Lebanon. And so you got Hezbollah that is heavily armed down in the southern area of Lebanon. Remember, Hezbollah is a proxy of Tehran, a proxy of the Ayatollahs in Iran. And so they get funded and they get given all this military grade rockets, and it's a direct connection, a bridge that helps them get all of those materials and funds and resources is Syria. So now what's interesting is that Syria is no longer there to be the bridge between Iran and between Hezbollah. And the one thing about Jelani, the one who's kind of pseudo running the show right now, it's not completely official, but he seems to be the figurehead for this movement. He is against Iran. He's Sunni, they're Shia. He doesn't want to work with Iran at all. He wants nothing to do with them. And this is the interesting kind of dynamic in the Middle East, Steve, is that you've got Iran and there's this axis of kind of evil that's going on with Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey. But now when it comes to Syria, Iran and Turkey are kind of battling over their presence and influence in Syria. So again, Syria is one of those places it's going to require a lot of time. And the question is, what will this Jelani do? Jelani actually is the name. I found this interesting, Steve. Jelani, his name that he's associated with there actually comes from the word Golan, which is where he was born. His family, he was born in the Golan Heights, which is now controlled by Israel. Israel has sovereignty over the Golan Heights. They've announced sovereignty, Israel, over the Golan Heights. And then on top of that, America, during the Trump administration, his first term, gave Israel the sovereignty over the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights was originally a part of Syria, but after the 6-day war, Israel took control of it as a buffer zone to make sure that the people that were living in the Galilee region would be safe from Lebanon and be safe from Syria and Jordan. And so it's interesting because as a result of what's going on, Israel, in the midst of their strife with toppling Assad, Israel used it as an opportunity to expand their buffer zone just a little bit more. The Mount Hermon in the north is a slope that goes up and then a slope that goes down. The slope that goes up is the slope for Israel on Israel's side, and then the slope that went down was Syria's side. Israel took the other side of the slope of Mount Hermon, a strategic
what a sight, Chris. I saw Jerusalem Post put a picture of them looking through binoculars of their new site. It's fantastic.
I believe that's where Netanyahu gave his speech, where he also said something very significant that I think we need to constantly be praying about, not only for Israel, but also for the Syrians, all of the Syrians. I mean, so many millions of Syrians have died in the more than a decade of the civil war that's been going on. And so when you see what's going on there, the thing that Netanyahu said is that this could go two ways. This could either be an amazing thing for the Syrian people, freedom and liberation from Assad, and growth and determination, and all these amazing things that come with the freedom of being released from Assad's regime. But at the other side of the coin, Steve, is it could also become the next country that's developing ISIS and developing Al Qaeda and developing terrorism. So, there's two really, really, really distinct paths that Syria could go right now. And that's why Israel has to make sure it creates its safety zone for its people in the north as they try to bring those Israelis back home. There's still Israelis that are displaced from October 7th in the north. And so hopefully they'll be able to come back to their home soon. But all that to say, Syria is in a transition period. So we need to be praying for the Syrian people who want freedom. And we also need to be praying for Israel and their safety as well.
No, I agree, and it's a great segue. I don't want to end this podcast on any kind of negative thing. This is positive for the Syrians. We don't know what's going to happen. But Chris, according to, I was looking at Harbinger's Daily. Rob Gottslig, our Canadian director, is one of the contributors to Harbinger's Daily. Our podcast is featured in Harbinger's Daily. In fact, we should get the head of Harbinger's and interview them for our podcast at some future time.
We're taking them to Israel. We're taking them to Israel at the end.
I know that. But tell our 7 listeners how they could access Harbinger's Daily.
I believe it's just harbingers.com. I have to double check.
Yeah, it's harbingerdaily.com.
Harbinger Daily.
That's a great resource for all kinds of articles, including Friends of Israel. But
from a biblical perspective.
Yes, from definitely a biblical perspective. And so I found this one, Chris, which is to me, in an age where we're talking about war and difficulties and all kinds of problems, high anxiety, the Harbingers ran an article from Decision Magazine dated December 5th, 2024. And the headline is Bible Sales Up 22% in 2024 with first-time purchasers influencing the rise. Chris, that puts a smile on my face. In comparison to 23, Bible sales increased 22% during January through October, according to Circana BookScan, with first-time purchasers influencing the rise. As of October, there was a 41% increase in Bible sale copies since 2019, from 9.7 million to more than 13.7 million this year. So people are experiencing anxiety themselves, or they're worried for their children and grandchildren, Crosby explained in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. He went on to say it's related to artificial intelligence, election cycles, and all of that feeds our desire for assurance that we are going to be okay. Chris, that is the bottom line. Is there an answer? You talked about the Syrians have a choice to make. People want to be okay. How can I be okay? That is not a theological term, okay. Well, how can I be okay? Well, we have to be able to answer theologically in a practical and understanding way. We know a way that you can be okay. Even if you're an idiot and break your hip, you're still going to be okay. How is that possible? It's possible by getting God's word, reading it, and learning that God cares about us. He sent his son to die on the cross that we can live. It's the greatest message you could ever give.
Steve, in Hebrew, the word for okay is beseder. Beseder means okay. And if you actually separate the word out, it's be, which is in, and seder, which is like a Passover Seder, which is order. So it means when somebody says, how you doing? You're just saying everything's in order. So the thing that we want to say is you want to know if you're going to be okay? The big question is everything in order between you and God? Do you have peace with God? That is the biggest question. And I think people are looking for not only peace in their life, but peace with God. And God provided the way in order to have that order in your life between him and you. It was once broken. That relationship was broken, but in Christ you can find reconciliation, it says. Paul's ministry, I love how he defines his ministry. He says, I have a ministry of reconciliation. What does he mean? I want to show the world how they can have peace with God through Jesus the Messiah, who died for them and shed their blood. And all it takes is one step of faith in believing in him so that you can be beseder, in order. Okay.
Amen, brother. The idea encouraged me so much because I wouldn't have predicted that Bible sales would be up. The two ladies I talked to never even heard of Jonah.
Yep.
They never even heard of Jonah. Yet it seems to be that there are people who want to be okay and at least somehow, by God's grace, are looking to the Word of God to find a way to be okay. And that's why you and I are here in the Jew and the Gentile podcast. I don't think we could help people be okay, but we can tell people that God could help them be okay.
100%. Now, hey, listen, we're going to move to the Yiddish word of the day. The Yiddish word of the day. Steve is beseder. He's okay. He's in order. He's got a new hip, but we decided we wanted to bring a Yiddishkeit way of understanding what happened to Steve to our Yiddish word of the day. So, Steve, the Yiddish word of the day, take it over, my friend.
All right. So you came and texted me and said, "What's the Yiddish word of the day?" I said, "Oh, I need a minute." And as soon as I got that text and sent back a reply, I knew the word. And so before I asked my wife, I said, "See if you could guess what Yiddish word of the day I picked." She didn't know what I picked. And I said, "I have the Yiddish word for the day. What is it?" And immediately she said, "Klutz." I said, "Yep, you hit it right on the head." That's my wife. Got it right. Klutz means he stumbles. He's he no coordination. I tried to jump a gas hose and I am clumsy as could be. So the Yiddish word for the day, and by the way, Chris, I'm wearing a Zadie, means grandfather sweatshirt for my grandkids. But Klutz is a clumsy person. I am the Klutz, what's his name from, what was that? Forrest
Gump.
Forrest Gump. Stupid is as stupid does. And so I am the definition of klutz and stupid at the same time.
All right, everybody. Yiddish word of the day is klutz. I'll tell you something. Steve is no klutz, but he had a klutz moment when he went as a 71-year-old to hurdle over that hose like an Olympic athlete, but just didn't land. He didn't stick the landing just right. So
not at all.
Well, everybody, thanks so much for being a part of the Jew and Gentile podcast. I want to remind you, go to foiequip.org. There you can sign up for our Hanukkah class tonight, where I'll be teaching all about Hanukkah. Hanukkah falls on Christmas Day this year, which is a very exciting thing as we merge those two events together. So please go to foiequip.org. There you can sign up. Not only can you sign up for a free class, but go to christmasisjewish.org and get your very free devotional that we're handing out, Finding Messiah in Christmas, to prepare your hearts for the Christmas season. Oh, and guess what? Text us at 424-444-1948 and get your free stickers, people. Hey, thanks so much for being a part of the Jew and Gentile podcast. We will see you next week.